Welcome back, Dr. Matt here. So dehydration, it's nothing to joke about, especially with this heat wave we're currently experiencing, at least in my neck of the woods, but I know across the United States. There's a lot of heat coming, there's a lot of sun exposure, and it is high value that we consider, man, what does this mean for our body? And as a whole, the human body is well adapted to heat and has beautifully orchestrated, created, cooling mechanisms to withstand extreme changes in weather, including, extreme heats and, 100-degree weather, 105-degree weather. This is if our body has been given the correct resources to deal with such things as hot weather. And as with so many preventative conditions that land people in the hospital, put people on their back, these days, proper nutrition is a huge player. And haphazard living, thinking we're invincible, putting more time into our lawn and our bathroom or our home than our actual temple, our physical body, that kind of ideology thinking can serve us in a very negative way and potentially land us in trouble. So in a world of endless water bottles, vending machines everywhere we can grab water, smart marts on every corner, a grocery store every other corner, somehow we manage to maintain a state of dehydration in the industrialized world. That literally is the standard way of being an American, is to be dehydrated. In fact, so standard that over 75% of Americans actually live, or I should say exist. You can't live optimally if you're dehydrated, but exist in a state of perpetual dehydration. That's not good. And for many, this is not because they're not drinking, say, 8 glasses of water a day. It is because they're putting in so many items that promote water loss. Day after day, week after week, month after month. And these items are offsetting those glasses of water they're consuming. So say a person, consumes processed foods mainly. They walk around in a state of chronic inflammation because of medications they're taking or metabolic diseases they have, say like diabetes, and they're drinking so-called energy drinks, Red Bulls, Monsters, Bangs, you name it, consuming soda pop on a regular basis. Coffee is their lubricant of choice. Let's not forget the hustle mantra of our society, that hustle lifestyle. We got to get ahead, so we're going to get like 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, or pop an Ambien, go to bed. All this is promoting fluid loss. It's causing us to be behind when it comes to fluid, when it comes to hydration. And a lack of sleep itself, it disrupts the production of something called vasopressin. And vasopressin's job, or antidiuretic hormone, is just that. It's responsible for antidiuresis. It's responsible for controlling our body's water balance. So if we're not sleeping, not taking time to sleep, we're not going to have good control over our water balance. If you are running low on sleep, or if traveling a lot, different time zones, definitely get that extra glass of water in. Now on top of that, consider your food routine. We always come back to food, right? Food, thinking, the foundations never change. If we're eating a bag of chips, crackers, white bread, candy bars, those foods are all dehydrating. That white pasty bread, not only because they instigate an inflammatory response and they're just a general irritant to the human being, but because they're literally almost 100% devoid of any water. Like, some of these might have like up to 2% water content, but otherwise they're literally devoid of water. And what is our body mostly created out of? Water. So our body has to still create saliva. It still has to create gastric juices to digest, to metabolize these food substances. So we're literally, every time we're eating those crackers, those chips, we're getting farther and farther behind. And this would be in contrast to, say, eating a piece of fruit, which is, on average about like 90% water. I believe like a blueberry is about 85% water. Watermelon, of course, is even higher. Or even a piece of beef. You think of beef as dehydrating or hydrating. It's actually hydrating. A piece of beef, after it's been cooked, it's about 60% water. Compound that over time, the whole foods eating versus the ultra processed crackers, chips kind of eating. We're talking days, we're talking weeks, months, years. The next thing you know, your body is either, has all this margin to work with because you're in this massively hydrated state from eating all those precious whole foods, or on the other hand, it's literally just hanging on by the thinnest strand. You're just like, the body's just thinking, please, 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 hold me here, little string. It's just praying that there's no major stressors, there's no major changes, life alterations that would toss the body over the edge and put it in massive compromise and potentially, even hospitalization. Margin, beautiful thing. The more we create, I think each of us would enjoy life just that much more. So recently, 2 people who I talked to both ended up in the emergency room from heat exhaustion, and the other from heat stroke. And the interesting thing about these gentlemen is that they weren't shriveled up. They didn't look like raisins. They didn't look like, and they hadn't lost like 10 pounds of fluid while working outside in the heat. They were working outside in the heat. Both of these guys, though, I would consider being in reasonable shape. I mean, you would think they were looking externally. You would think they're in reasonable shape. Their body mass index is about right. And if anybody was to say, how they ended up in the hospital or what was up with them, they would say these are healthy young men who ended up who were in the hospital because of heat exhaustion, heat stroke. So it can happen to anybody, kind of thing. We hear that mantra a lot, right? But the deal is, the internal environment is often, we don't get to see it. We don't see the fight that's going on to maintain homeostasis and fluid balance from a lifestyle that these gentlemen were walking in, of processed food eating, of instant food eating, of consuming energy drinks multiple times a day, of soda pops and beer most nights, or even a couple beers, a couple extra on weekends. All that kind of stuff you often don't see, a 20-year-old, a 32-year-old kind of person, until later on it really starts manifesting. But little did these guys realize that day after day they were compromising their ability to compensate for changes in their environment, such as the weather, going from the 70s that they're working in up in the upper 90s, even over 100 degrees. And what happened after a couple of days of working outside in this weather, their body started shutting down. Literally, their cooling processes ran out of resources. They stopped sweating. They started cramping. They started slurring speech, started vomiting. And next thing you know, what? They're at the ER thinking, these guys now are inches from death. And it didn't have to be that way. So thankfully, both these guys made it out. And they're still pretty lethargic. And, they got a little road ahead to get themselves back before they could actually, work a full day. Especially work a full day in the sun, and potentially people that have heat stroke and heat exhaustion, often the sun for a long, long time is really challenging for them to be out for any extended period of time because of this hypersensitization that's happened to their system, and the fact their body never wants to experience that thing ever again. So dehydration and heat exhaustion, they can't happen to any of us. There's none of us, myself included, that are just like, oh, it can't happen to you. Especially if we're not considering the needs of our bodies and the unique situations we might find ourselves in. But each of us, before say a unique situation shows up, or an unexpected situation shows up, or massive weather changes happen, we can take charge of our health margin. We can put more margin into our being. We can look at our sleep routine. We can look at our food routine. We can look at how many Advils and Tylenols and extra medications we're taking. There's so many ways we can go about supporting ourselves and making sure we don't end up in a situation we do not want to end up in. And you don't have to be a construction worker in 100-degree weather to end up in a state of dehydration that could put you at a extreme health risk. You could be swimming in your swimming pool. You could be out on a boat on the lake. You could be swimming in the Columbia River and it's freezing cold in the water, but it's 95 degrees outside. You could be doing hot yoga. You could be driving your jet ski around all day long. You could be at a barbecue. You could find yourself in a excessive high stress situation. Any of these potentially could set you up for disaster if you haven't been taking care of yourself. However, if you've been taking care of yourself, it is extremely unlikely that you would find yourself in a disaster. This is why it's high value to preemptively consider your life routine. We make some adjustments. We start each day with a full glass of water. Before we put food in, before we put coffee, we grab that glass of water. Simple things. We add some sea salt to our foods. If we've been avoiding salt all over the place, consider adding some sea salt. Make a point of adding electrolytes to your water. If you're a heavy sweater, man, maybe you got to do electrolytes a couple times a day when it's really hot outside or you have been sweating a bunch. Sip on water throughout the day. Don't just guzzle some water and call it good. Sip on water throughout the day. Maybe you're going to pass on the beer. Maybe you're going to pass on the energy drinks for a bit. Maybe even pass on the extra cup of coffee you normally hit in the afternoon. And, when it comes to your children, definitely check on your kids because, they can be in the pool all day long. I know my kids, if there's a pool, they literally could be in there from when they get up until they go to bed at night. But that doesn't mean they're being hydrated just because they're in the pool and they're not, laying out in the sun frying themselves. So make sure they're sipping on water. Make sure they're getting regular fluids. And realize that, if you're aging, if you're 50, 60, 70 years old, 75 years old, your thirst sensors are not as good as they were when you were 20. And some of us generally just have dull thirst sensors, but especially with age, our thirst sensors dull. And you're probably not going to be thirsty enough that you're going to want to go on and drink some water until potentially you're in trouble. So it is high value to take charge of your hydration and make simple adjustments. Okay, am I sipping water throughout the day? How many glasses of water have I drunk today in comparison to how many cups of coffee I've had, or how many soda pops I've had, or how much crackers or chips or these kind of things I've had. Simple things, simple little choices consistently made create so much margin, create so much health opportunity for us, like in every other area. And it goes right along the same thing when it comes to a hydrated body versus a dehydrated body. All right, I'm Dr. Matt. Hope this is super helpful. Save it, share it, send it to your friends. Make sure your family and those you're hanging out with are informed about hydrating themselves consistently.